Next on Currents News, sisters and Catholic school students joining thousands of people at a rally in New York City for climate change. I'm Emily Druby, and that's ahead.
Bill DeBlasio pulling his presidential plug. The mayor's bid never got much support in the city or around the country. Record-shattering rains up to 3 feet deep have killed people in Texas and forced emergency rescues of hundreds more. Plus, new Cardinals will get their red hats in about 2 weeks, and some have links to the Brooklyn Diocese. Bishop DeBlasio is here to talk about it. The news starts right now. The Laudato Si generation out in force today. Young Catholics following the lead of Pope Francis to care for our common home. Good evening, I'm Michelle Powers. The kids walked out of school this morning on strike, a climate strike. They're delivering a message to the world leaders that planet Earth needs urgent attention. Currents News' Emily Druby is in downtown Manhattan with the latest. Emily.
Michelle, those students demanding action, calling on world leaders to take steps in preventing climate change. Now, the turnout here was incredible. Tens of thousands of people were on these streets, including members from the Brooklyn Diocese.
What do we want? Climate justice! What do we want it now?
The demands for action to prevent climate change rang through Lower Manhattan Friday afternoon ahead of a UN summit. Many of those calls coming from students, including from the Brooklyn Diocese, like Joel Cahoon of St. Joseph High School.
Because at the end of the day, it's power is in numbers. So it's like I want to come out and support everybody, support what I believe in.
With the help of the Sisters of St. Joseph, kids from their 4 locally sponsored schools traded in their textbooks for posters attending Friday's climate change rally.
Climate justice!
Isabel Murat of the Mary Lewis Academy says fighting climate change is ingrained in the fabric of her school.
Going to Mary Lewis, we advocate for change when it comes to the environment. Like, we're so involved. Like, we have a garden, we do neighborhood cleanup, we're always recycling, and we take that really seriously. And I'm just here protesting with my school, trying to make a difference in the environment.
It's also an issue close to Pope Francis's heart.
C'è il pericolo reale di lasciare alle generazioni future macerie, deserti e sporcizie. Auspico pertanto che questa preoccupazione per lo stato della nostra casa comune si traduca in un'azione organica e concertata di ecologia integrale.
In Laudato Si, the Holy Father's second encyclical, he discusses the importance of caring for our common home. A quote from Laudato Si graced the backs of the Sisters of St. Joseph's matching rally shirts. Sister Helen Carney, the congregation's president, says it's an issue not only close to their hearts, but one they pass on to their students.
In 2015, our congregation unanimously passed a land ethic. Those same efforts are being taught in our schools. So it's really important for us to nurture these women, empower them to make change in this world because we are at the brink of a disaster.
And the students are grateful, not only for the lesson, but also for their support. And this really does seem to be the Laudato Si generation. Thousands of young people were out here today. In Lower Manhattan, Emily Druby, Currents News. Back to you, Michelle.
Now, Emily, this isn't the only opportunity this week for kids to get involved with this cause. Can you tell me about the Youth Climate Summit that's happening tomorrow?
Yes, Michelle, tomorrow the fight to combat climate change will continue at the United Nations, where young people from around the world will get together to discuss the issue and talk about some possible solutions. Now, this comes just ahead of the UN's Climate Action Summit, which begins on Monday. Michelle?
Emily, let me ask you something else. Were there any counter-protests?
You know, you always kind of expect to see anti-protesters at a protest, but I didn't really see any here. However, they might have been in the crowd somewhere, but they were getting drowned out by the voices of those here to combat climate change. Michelle?
All right, Emily, thank you so much. And that strike is happening across the globe tonight. Let's take a look. Students in Australia kicking off the day of demonstrations. A massive crowd marched in the center of Melbourne, Organizers estimate more than 300,000 people took part, mostly kids skipping school, making it the largest climate action in Australian history. And then in Paris, teenagers holding signs gathered in a park. The city is the site of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement that called for cuts to greenhouse gases. 2 years ago, the Trump administration pulled out of the deal. As Emily reported, next week a climate summit of world leaders will take place at the UN in New York, and even more protests are planned. Bill DeBlasio is pulling the plug on his run for the White House. The mayor says his campaign is over because this was clearly not his time. When he got into the race last spring, DeBlasio was one of 24 candidates trying to win the Democratic nomination. The mayor never got more than 1% in the national polls and failed to qualify for the last debate. This afternoon, he talked about how that played a big role in getting out of the race.
I thought there was a chance after not getting into September. I still thought there was a chance to get into October. We saw that with Steve Bullock, didn't get into June, did get into July. You know, it's obviously possible. But as we went over the last few weeks, every day that passed, it got tougher if there wasn't more progress. We were watching the polling to see if anything was moving, and it just wasn't moving. So in the end, you know, you got to make decisions based on the facts, and sometimes it's just not your time, and that's okay.
So far, DeBlasio hasn't endorsed a candidate for president. President Trump greeted the DeBlasio dropout with sarcasm, tweeting that it was really big political news, perhaps the biggest story in years, adding that NYC is devastated, he's coming home. The mayor never got much support in New York for his campaign. There were tough questions for the president today as he welcomed Australia's Prime Minister to the White House. When the pageantry was done, Trump faced reporters taking on several hot-button topics, including one about a mysterious whistleblower. Karen Kafa reports from Washington.
President Trump and the First Lady hosting the second state visit of the administration, welcoming the Prime Minister of Australia to the White House Friday.
I don't think we've ever had a better relationship than we have right now.
The visit, according to the White House, intended to highlight the strong ties between the two countries and common interests like North Korea and China as the U.S. continues to negotiate a trade deal.
They have grown and they have become, a substantive economy in the world. And once you sort of get into that level, then you need to be able to be playing to the same rules as those other developed nations.
And Iran. Trump announcing new sanctions on Iran's central bank Friday in the wake of an attack on a Saudi oil facility that the U.S. has blamed on Tehran.
They could solve the problem very easily. All they have to do is stop with the terror.
But as he hosts one foreign leader, President Trump facing questions about a whistleblower complaint regarding communication with another. The president wouldn't confirm reports that the complaint was prompted by a phone call with the leader of Ukraine.
It's a partisan whistleblower. They shouldn't even have information. I've had conversations with many leaders that are always appropriate.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called on the Director of National Intelligence to send the information on the complaint to Congress, as she noted the law requires. In Washington, Karen Kafa, Currents News.
On to a scary story out of New Jersey. A man there charged with scouting out Times Square and other famous landmarks for terror attacks. He's Alexei Saab from Morristown. His list of many targets included the George Washington Bridge, the U.S. Capitol, and the Lincoln Memorial. Although Saab is a naturalized citizen, prosecutors allege he was a secret agent for Hezbollah, the Iranian-linked terror gang. The feds say Saab was looking for structural weaknesses at the locations so that a future attack would cause the most destruction. The FBI is looking for help in catching the arsonist guilty of torching Catholic churches in El Paso, Texas. 3 have been firebombed: St. Jude's, St. Patrick's, and St. Matthew's. Tonight, the FBI is offering a $5,000 reward for information that would crack the case. The parishes are mostly Hispanic. No one's been hurt in the arsons, but each of the churches has been damaged. The deadly storm named Imelda has killed at least 2 people in Texas. Heavy flooding has inundated major highways in Houston. The heaviest rainfall in southwest Texas ended last night, but forecasters are warning the storm is shifting north. More flash floods are expected. 2 men have died, a 19-year-old who was electrocuted and a middle-aged man who drowned while driving through 8-foot deep floodwaters. Ed Lavandera has more on that driving death. He also reports on the emergency crews who are continuing to rescue hundreds of people trapped by the storm.
Southeast Texas underwater.
There's been a lot of water that has fallen on this city.
Still reeling after a tropical depression hammered the area. Residents were frantically trying to escape the rising waters. In Beaumont, airboats surveying flooded streets for those stranded.
Are you coming with us? We might not be able to come back, folks.
Houston's police chief was going door to door to help residents secure their homes and evacuate. Local officials scrambling to help everyone they could.
We were in the car and the water was rising pretty fast. So I got out and saw the police standing on the bridge, and I started screaming and they started screaming back, and they came all the way down to the car and walked us back up here.
In Harris County, hundreds of high water rescues. But tragically, one man lost his life after driving into nearly 8 feet of floodwaters.
The vehicle continued to go forward. It did come to a pause, and according to witnesses, for some unknown reason, he just punched it and tried to drive through it some more.
Roads turned to rivers, cars stranded on Houston highways, drivers forced to abandon their vehicles.
I feel all right. I was on my way to the dentist. Okay. This was pretty bad. It's so much and so fast a time.
People struggling in neck-deep water. This man was spotted floating down this street. One couple in Jefferson County received this huge scare, spotting an alligator in the floodwaters near their home. That county has received more than 40 inches of rain.
The most wild thing I have ever seen. Like, this is so much worse than Harvey.
Ed Lavandera filing that report from Texas. Milda is now moving away from the state with our eyes set on Arkansas and Louisiana. We are in the heart of hurricane season, and the severe weather is not letting up, as this satellite image shows. There are currently 6 named storms in the Atlantic Ocean, the Eastern Pacific, and over the United States right now. That's never happened before at one time. The storm that's causing the greatest concern is Jerry, which is now considered a hurricane and is headed for the Virgin Islands. There's a lot more news headed your way. Hundreds of New York doctors in Rome. There's a very important reason for their meeting. We'll have it next. The Pope will soon give out red hats to new cardinals. Bishop DeBlasio is moments away, and he'll talk about the ones who have connections to the Brooklyn Diocese. Many call it a miracle when something unusual happens to the blood of a Catholic martyr. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. There's another death being linked to e-cigarettes tonight, and a major American retailer is ending sales of the devices. A man in his 40s has died in Missouri from a vaping-related lung disease. That brings the national death toll to 8, and health officials are worried it could go even higher. 530 people are sick, some are in critical condition. And late today, Walmart said it would stop selling e-cigarettes in all of its U.S. stores. The products will remain available until inventory runs out, which could be in January. Doctors from all over New York went to Rome on a mission. They want inspiration to aid the poor. They've already met the Pope, but there's still a lot of work left to be done. Melissa Butts reports from the Eternal City.
Hundreds of doctors from New York gathered for an important meeting in Rome. This was not a typical medical congress. These providers care for patients with limited resources, many of whom are immigrants who feel lost in their new country. The meeting was organized by the group Somos. Many changes are made based on statistics alone, while the patient is forgotten. There are some things that must be done with the patient's well-being in mind. The patient's quality of life, his health, and his happiness must be taken into consideration.
The mission for this conference is we all get together, particularly for the primary care, to spread out, to give them their voice. And we see the policy here, maker here. We talk to those partners, the hospitals. We share our view and our experience with the patient. We want them to provide support to us to provide a better care for our patients.
Somos Community Care is a network of 2,500 providers that treats 1 million patients in New York's poorest neighborhoods. In a healthcare system where a financially limited patient receives low-quality care, it's common for the patient to receive rushed and superficial medical attention. The doctor may treat him out of obligation only, but dedicate very little time to him. New measures are being implemented to improve the quality of health care, like initiatives for healthy patients. Many of the doctors are immigrants who earned their degrees in their native countries. They later moved to the United States and obtained permission to practice there. The goal is to have medical providers who speak the same language as the patients.
It's crucial from the perspective of the patient to be treated and be guided through a complicated healthcare delivery system by people who understand them. And that's very, very important.
Their presence in Rome draws attention to the difficult situation of millions of immigrants. On top of the challenges that come from simply being a foreigner in a new land, they also face health problems. The conference in Rome included a meeting with the Pope. The attendees wanted to express their gratitude for the Pope's message, encouraging respect toward immigrants. They would like to show him that doctors know no bounds. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Pope Francis will be handing out 13 new red hats in a couple of weeks. He's giving the church 13 new cardinals. They are from all around the globe. 2 of them have a special relationship with Bishop DeBlasio. He's with Ed Wilkinson for more on the new cardinals. Ed.
Thank you, and Bishop DeBlasio is here today to talk with us about the newest members of the College of Cardinals. Bishop, 13 new members of the College of Cardinals. You were telling me you actually know 2 of these people.
Yes, I know certainly Bishop Ramazzini, who's from Guatemala. He has come to the diocese several times since I've been here as bishop, but also I visited him in Guatemala with a delegation from the USCCB, and he was in a very difficult area there. In fact, he had government guards whenever he left the town which he was in, San Marcos. And so we went there in solidarity, trying to give him some encouragement, to try to bring some aid with Catholic Relief Services and the Committee on Migration. So he really is under death threats a lot of times. I don't know if the situation changed in the recent years, but he was really, because he spoke out in defense of the poorer people, of the indigenous people. Mm-hmm. A great bishop, 72 years old, to be a cardinal. He's in another diocese now on the Pacific coast. But again, it's an honor for him, but recognizing his work. Also, I know Father Cerne, who's in the Vatican dicastery for justice and peace with the migration portfolio, a Jesuit. I had lunch with him when I was there in the beginning of the year, and just to talk about migration. And he's a very interesting person, has a good grasp of social ministry. He's been doing that his whole life. I think he's a Canadian citizen, but originally from Slovakia. So interesting that he's not a bishop, he's a priest. And there's
now, why would the Pope do that? Why would he choose someone?
That's been happening before, but I'm not sure that is he going to be made a bishop or not. It depends.
Were you surprised to see his name on there?
Kind of surprised, yeah. That was kind of odd. Yeah.
Do you see a trend in the types of people that the Holy Father is picking to be cardinals?
The trend is that he's going to the peripheries. He's going to small countries where they never thought there would be a cardinal, but he's giving status to the church. They're saying that every country is important, and that even the small countries deserve to be recognized as having part of the universal church. So I mean, it's a good. I mean, this is John Paul VI started it. John Paul kept it, and but he's gone a little bit further than everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Do you read anything into the fact that there were no Americans?
Not really. It's not every time that we get an American cardinal out of the group, but you know, that's hard to say. I mean, I don't know the mind of the Pope.
Mm-hmm. What does this say about the next Pope that's going to be chosen by these men who are made cardinals? Is the Holy Father trying to mold the college so that it's somebody in his own liking that would be the next Pope?
Well, I don't know, but I think it certainly is expanded the field where people from smaller countries people who never would have had an opportunity. The Holy Spirit works through in many ways, and the College of Cardinals, inspired by the Holy Spirit, elect the Pope, but I'm sure we'll get a good Pope when he retires or dies.
Yeah. What does this say about what the Holy Father is trying to do? Like you say, he's trying to internationalize the college. Is it? Would you say that we would never be going back to we would always be picking a new pope from an international scene? Like it used to be always Italian, right? Now that trend was broken with a Polish pope and a German pope. And is that the trend now these days?
I think so. I mean, to internationalize is see that there's so much to be done around the world from different perspectives, having somebody else from a different culture managing and guiding the church makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Good. Bishop, thanks so much for being with us today. Back to the news desk.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DeBlasio. The Cardinals will be installed by the Holy Father during a consistory at the Vatican on October 5th. On to a reported miracle in Italy yesterday. The blood of an early church martyr liquefied. The Diocese of Naples was celebrating the feast of San Januarius, the patron saint of the city. Pope Francis took part in the ceremony when he was there in 2015. This time, the saint's blood, which is normally in a reliquary and solid, became liquid after the morning mass. According to the people in the town, this miracle happens a few times a year. They say if the miracle doesn't occur, it signifies war, famine, or another disaster. Still to come on Currents News, a huge surprise, what the cops did for a kid to make a special day even better. Plus, what Pope Francis is doing with a car to make things better for a troubled country. And please check out one of the latest features in the tablet, the Our Diocesan Family page. That's where you can send in photos of your family receiving certain sacraments, such as baptism, First Communion, confirmation, and marriage. For more information and to submit your pictures, go to thetablet.org/OurDiocesanFamily. We'll be right back. A huge birthday surprise for a boy with special needs will melt your heart. Georgia police threw a party for now 13-year-old Ty Kleiner, who has cerebral palsy, baking him a 3-tier custom cake featuring a Disney pirate theme. They also allowed Ty to play with some off-limit gadgets and promoted him to the title of sergeant. One of the lieutenants explained the grand gesture.
It was an opportunity to do something good, to make something small into something grand and big for him that he wouldn't always have the opportunity for.
After the party, Ty and his family went on a free trip to Disney World. I'd say that's a pretty good celebration. Happy birthday, Ty. Finally tonight, an update on the Pope's Lamborghini. Didn't know he had one. The car was blessed and signed by Francis in May of 2018 before being put up for auction. It brought in nearly $900,000. Now the Vatican is confirming some of that money is being donated by the Holy Father to help Haiti. The Caribbean country is still trying to recover after a massive earthquake in 2010. The Pope's donation will be used to rebuild a seminary and a school for children. That is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.